I want to be very clear. Turkey and Qatar have gained influence in Syria, are seeking influence elsewhere and everywhere throughout the region. And from here, I warn, Turkey is the new Iran.
15 years from now, Israel will have a war with Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood will eventually take over Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood, which is a Sunni jihad, now after we weaken the Shia jihad, will be a threat to the world. Turkey is now taking over.
I'm not so sure that we will have as easy a time with the Turks as we've had with the Iranians. I've been following Turkish military doctrine, and
the strongest army in the Middle East.
The storm is coming. We have to be prepared for the next war, which will be probably against Turkey and Egypt.
Turkey channels first money to what Israel perceives, what Israel sees as nothing short of terror cells in the West Bank. Turkey is hosting all these people, allowing them to act freely, send money to the West Bank, create terror cells in the West Bank. It is clearly a worrying issue, and Turkey has been able to encircle Israel with its proxies in the West Bank, in Gaza, in Egypt.
We need to ensure that Erdogan doesn't create a new alliance of radical Islam Sunni version, meaning an axis between himself, Julani, Qatar, and Hamas.
Here is Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz. This is in Hebrew, so I'll play it in Hebrew and then I'll translate it to you after the Hebrew version. And the captions are at the bottom.
האינטרסים שלנו לא ניתן לארדואן לחזק את סוריה נגדנו. אנחנו יודעים לפעול למען האינטרסים. אין עימות אלים כרגע בין ישראל לטורקיה, יש אפילו יחסים...
משהו שיכול לקרות בעתיד?
אין לנו שאיפה עכשיו להיכנס...
והוא, יש לו שאיפות?
והוא גם צריך שלא תהיה לו שאיפה כזאת, כי כוחנו נמצא איתנו, אנחנו לא מצמצים. שמעתי את החזות שביחזרו לירושלים, ויהיו מושלי ירושלים, אמרתי לאותו שר טורקי ולארדואן. אנחנו לא האימפריה הנוצרית הקורסת, וירושלים זה לא קונסטנטינופול שכבשתם אותה והקמתם את האימפריה העות'מאנית. האינטרסים שלנו לא ניתן לארדואן...
And what he said is, we will not allow Erdogan to strengthen Syria against us. We know how to defend Israel's interest. There is no direct military confrontation between Israel and Turkey at the moment, and we have no desire to enter one. But Erdogan should also make sure he has no such ambition, because our strength is with us. We are not intimidated. Israel Katz. We have Turkish President Erdogan.
The current government of Israel, which is addicted to war, through provocations, lead our region into instability. Israel is violating the fundamental human rights in this geography, trampling over the international law, and Israel step by step occupies and invades the Palestinian land. So all those occupation policies, all that invasion and all those illegal settlements and all those policies of forcing the Palestinians to be intimidated and forced to flee its homeland is the source of all those conflicts in the region. And not only our Palestinian brothers and sisters, and not only the brotherly people of Lebanon pays a price, but the whole region is paying a huge price. For example, due to all those conflicts taking place in our region, one of the greatest shock of the history is taking place in the oil supply. And not only the oil supply is affected, but at the same time, from natural gas to fertilizers, from diesel to petrochemical products, in many of those products, the prices skyrocketed. So as the Republic of Turkey, in such a global scene in which every passing day we see yet another crisis, thanks to God, we are managing all those multiple shocks quite successfully. Despite all those conflicts and all those wars, the Turkish economy stands still.
All right. And I'm pretty sure everyone is more familiar with the Israeli military. It's basically just the US military. They get all our equipment essentially. So, just in case we're probably less familiar with the Turkish military. So, here's a quick analysis of what the Turkish military possesses.
Is primarily composed of conscripts, a key reason it has the second largest military force in NATO. Turkish armed forces are greater than those of France and Britain combined, with 355,000 active personnel and 380,000 in reserve. It also features a robust air force with American fighters and is actually the second largest standing force in NATO after the United States and the eighth biggest number of active troops in the world. At age 20, all men are required to serve in the military for 12 months, and all men up to age 41 may be called upon to serve in emergency situations. Some exceptions are made for those who are pursuing degrees, and university graduates can elect to serve either as a reserve officer for 12 months or a private for 6 months. Women are allowed only to become officers, choosing it as a career, enrolling in military school, and not as a conscript.
Turkish fighter jets displaying the mighty power of Turkey.
Most of the equipment and weaponry systems used by the Turkish armed forces are of U.S. origin. Today, other main weapon suppliers of Turkey include Germany, Israel, England, France, and Russia. Of its air power, it has a total aircraft strength of 1,067, which features 207 fighters, 207 attack, 87 transports, a total helicopter strength of 492, which also holds 94 attack helicopters.
All right, guys, just to give you an idea of Turkey military power. And before we get into our official report, finally, here's just a Google map of where Turkey is right here and where Israel is right here. It's only a 16-hour drive, guys. That's kind of shocking. So let's just keep that in mind. And they only separated by what, Lebanon and Syria. That's it. Yeah, okay. Now it makes a lot more sense. Okay, guys, let's start our official report for this evening. For decades, the strategic calculus of the Middle East was simple. Israel faced off against an isolated, heavily sanctioned axis of resistance led by Tehran. Every war game, every defense budget, and every intelligence operation in Tel Aviv was calibrated toward one primary existential threat, Iran and its regional proxy. But behind closed doors in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and Ankara, a massive seismic shift has quietly redrawn the map. The Israeli security establishment has increasingly begun using a phrase that would have sounded unthinkable a decade ago. Turkey is the new Iran. This isn't just political theater or a temporary diplomatic spat between leaders. We are witnessing the birth of a brand new, high stakes Cold War between the two strongest, most technological, advanced, non Arab military powers in the Middle East, the State of Israel and the Republic of Turkey. Consider what has transpired recently. Israel officially recognized the 1915 Armenian Genocide, a historic diplomatic rebuke targeted directly at Ankara. Israeli fighter jets struck targets in Syria, in the areas where Turkish military teams were evaluating new bases, prompting secret technical talks in Azerbaijan to prevent direct military clashes. Tel Aviv explicitly warned Ankara that setting up military bases near Palmyra in central Syria is a hard red line. Meanwhile, Turkey suspended direct trade with Israel, downgraded diplomatic ties, and explicitly declared its intention to contain Israeli power in the Levant and the Mediterranean. How did two countries that once ran joint military exercises and shared top secret intelligence transform into systematic rivals? Why is a direct kinetic war unlikely, yet a shadow war inevitable? And what happens when a nuclear ambitious tech superpower faces off against the second largest standing army in NATO? Today, we break down every facet of the emerging Israel Turkey Cold War, from the strikes over Syria to the gas fields of the Mediterranean and the covert intelligence battles fought in the shadows. To understand how dangerous this new rivalry is, you first have to understand a forgotten truth. Israel and Turkey used to be best friends in 1949. Turkey made history by becoming the first Muslim majority nation to officially recognize the state of Israel. During the Cold War, both nations shared a fundamental strategic doctrine known as David Ben Gurion's alliance of the logic was simple. Israel was surrounded by hostile Arab states. Turkey, a secular NATO member on the front lines of the Soviet Union, also had strained relations with neighboring Arab capitals like Damascus and Baghdad. By partnering with non-Arab regional actors, including Turkey, pre 1979 Iran and Ethiopia, Israel built an outer ring of security. By the 1990s, this partnership reached its golden era. It wasn't just a cold diplomatic arrangement, it was a full fledged military alliance. Israeli defense firms upgraded Turkey's F 4 Phantom jets and tanks in deals worth of billions of dollars. Israeli Air Force pilots trained in Turkey's vast open Anatolia airspace, giving Israeli pilots the geographic depth they lacked at home. Mossad and Turkish national intelligence shared high level intelligence regarding Syrian missile developments and regional terrorist networks. So, what broke the alliance? Two fundamental forces: ideology and geopolitics. First, the rise of Recep Tayyip Erdogan and the AK party in 2002 shifted Turkish foreign policy away from strict Western alignment toward a doctrine often called neo-Ottomanism. Ankara sought to reassert its leadership over the former Ottoman sphere of influence in the Middle East, positioning itself as the champion of the Palestinian cause and regional Muslim populations. Second came the 2010 Mavi Marmara raid, where Israeli commandos boarded a Turkish led civilian aid flotilla attempting to breach the naval blockade of Gaza. 10 Turkish activists were killed, diplomatic ties were shattered, ambassadors were recalled, and military cooperation came to a grinding halt, though economic trade quietly continued for years under the surface. The strategic trust was dead. And as the Middle East transformed over the next decade, that broken trust hardened into an outright strategic rivalry. If the Mediterranean is the strategic theater of this Cold War, Syria is the direct battleground where the two militaries could actually collide. For over a decade, Syria existed as a fractured, buffered state. Israel conducted hundreds of airstrikes under its campaign between wars to prevent Iranian weapons transfers to Hezbollah. Meanwhile, Turkey established a massive military footprint across northern Syria to suppress Kurdish YPG forces and manage Syrian refugee corridors. However, as Iranian influence faced severe pressures across the region, a critical power vacuum emerged in Syria, and both Ankara and Tel Aviv rushed to fill it, bringing their militaries face to face. Look at recent developments. Turkey expanded its military infrastructure south toward central Syria, establishing posts and conducting reconnaissance near Palmyra. Israel viewed this movement with extreme alarm. Israeli military command issued a formal warning to Ankara, establishing permanent Turkish air or missile defensive bases in central Syria is a hard red line. When Israeli jets struck Syrian military installations that Turkish technical teams had recently inspected, the risk of a miscalculation skyrocketed. The situation became so tense that Turkish and Israeli defense officials were forced to hold secret technical deconfliction talks in Baku, Azerbaijan, a mutual ally to both nations. The goal wasn't normalization, it was purely operational survival, creating a hotline to ensure that an Israeli F-35 tracking a target in Syria doesn't accidentally lock on to a Turkish air defense radar or troop convoy. In the past, Israel worried about Iranian backed militias on its northern border. Today, Israeli strategists worry about a heavily armed, highly modern NATO military occupying airspace right on their doorstep. While Syria is the immediate tactical flashpoint, the true engine driving this new Cold War is buried beneath the seabed of the Eastern Mediterranean. Energy, maritime control, and trade corridors. In the early 2010s, massive natural gas discoveries, such as Israel's Leviathan and Palmyra fields and Cyprus' Aphrodite field, transformed the Eastern Mediterranean into an energy gold mine. To bring the gas to Europe, Israel formed a powerful strategic bloc with Greece and the Republic of Cyprus, backed by the European Union and the United States. This coalition expanded into what Israeli strategists call the Hexagon Alliance, connecting India, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Greece, and Cyprus through the proposed India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, known as IMEC. Notice what is missing from the map: Turkey. Ankara found itself completely encircled and excluded from the energy architect of its own coastal backyard. Turkey responded with its aggressive Blue Homeland doctrine. Ankara signed a controversial maritime boundary deal with Libya's government, drawing a diagonal line across the Mediterranean that effectively claimed vast swaths of international waters. Blocking the proposed Israeli Greek subsea pipeline route to enforce this, the Turkish Navy began intercepting Israeli research vessels and foreign survey ships operating near Cyprus. Look at the dynamic here. Israel provides advanced radar, intelligence, and defense systems to Greece and Cyprus. Turkey maintains thousands of troops in northern Cyprus and deploys its navy to secure its maritime claims. This is classic Cold War behavior: proxy alignment, resource competition, and competitive maritime posturing, designed to deny the adversary economic dominance. If this Cold War ever turned hot, what would a direct military conflict look like? The short answer: it would be catastrophic for both nations, which is why both sides avoid kinetic war at all costs. But the military balance between them is fascinating because they possess radically different strengths. Let's break down the two forces. Turkey boasts the second largest standing army in NATO with over 425,000 active duty personnel and deep strategic depth. Unlike most regional powers, Turkey built an extraordinarily powerful domestic defense industry. Companies like Baykar, Aslan, and Roxstan manufacture everything from world-renowned combat drones like the Bayraktar TB2 and the supersonic Akinik to precision-guided cruise missiles and indigenous armored vehicles. Turkey operates a massive navy with 16 frigates, 12 modern submarines, and the TCG Anadolu, and an amphibious assault ship operating as a drone carrier. Furthermore, Turkey holds deep strategic defense ties with Pakistan, creating a unique trans regional link that worries Israeli strategists. Israel maintains a highly modern, tech driven military focused on qualitative air superiority and intelligence dominance. Its Air Force operates custom stealth fighters, the F 35I Aldir, proti- equipped with Israeli avionics and electronic warfare suits capable of penetrating dense air defense networks. Israel possesses the world's most sophisticated multi layered air defense network: Iron Dome, David Sling, Arrow 2, Arrow 3, and the new Iron Beam laser interception system. Israel receives billions on billions in U.S. foreign military financing and maintains unconfirmed but universally acknowledged nuclear triad via its German built Dolphin class submarines. Neither country can easily invade the other. Turkey lacks the sea lift capability to launch an amphibious invasion against Israel's fortified coastline, and Israel lacks the manpower to hold ground against Turkey's massive land army. Any direct clash would be a high tech air and naval war over the Mediterranean, costing hundreds of billions of dollars, devastating both economies and destabilizing the entire NATO alliance. Therefore, the fight is waged in the shadows. While fighter jets stay in their hangars, intelligence agencies are actively trading blows. The most sensitive friction point between Tel Aviv and Ankara is the Palestinian factor and Hamas. Israel views Turkey as one of Hamas' most important diplomatic and operational havens outside the Middle East for years. Turkey granted citizenship and residency to senior Hamas political and financial operatives, allowing them to operate openly out of Istanbul. This has turned Turkish soil into a battlefield for intelligence agencies. Israel's foreign intelligence agency, Mossad, has repeatedly conducted covert tracking operations inside Turkey to monitor and neutralize financial networks funding Palestinian armed groups. Turkey's intelligence agency, MIT, responded aggressively over the past few years. Turkish authorities have carried out massive counter espionage sweeps across Istanbul and Ankara, arresting dozens of alleged Mossad assets, informants, and private investigators. The intelligence war extends to trade and economic blockades as well. Turkey officially halted all direct trade with Israel, a massive blow to a trade relationship that had previously reached nearly $7 billion annually. When Israel recognized the Armenian Genocide, it signaled that Tel Aviv was ready to tear down the last remaining diplomatic taboos. The shadow war is no longer contained, it is spilling directly into public diplomacy. Here is the ultimate dilemma facing Israel strategists. Countering Iran was simple on a diplomatic level because Iran was a globally isolated pariah state, targeting Iranian proxies, bombing Iranian facilities, and pushing for international sanctions was backed by Washington and European capitals. Turkey is completely different. Turkey is a core member of NATO. It holds the second largest army in the alliance, controls the Turkish Straits, connecting the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, hosts critical NATO radar infrastructure at Turek, and houses U.S. tactical nuclear weapons at Incirlik Air Base. Washington and European capitals face an impossible balancing act. They cannot afford to alienate Turkey, which is strategically vital for containing Russian power in the Black Sea and securing energy routes to Europe. Yet, they cannot ignore the security demands of Israel, their premier non-NATO ally in West Asia. When Israeli strategists declare Turkey is the new Iran, they are attempting to construct a narrative that isolates Ankara diplomatically, but European and American defense planners recognize that treating a NATO member state like a rogue pariah state breaks the structural cohesion of the Western alliance. European nations like France have leaned toward supporting Greece and Cyprus against Turkish maritime claims, even providing advanced defense tech to Ankara's rivals. Yet, the structural weight of Turkey within NATO means Israel cannot simply press a button in Washington to sanction or isolate Ankara. So, where does this Middle Eastern Cold War head over the next decade? Direct military conflict between Israel and Turkey remains low probability. Not because they agree, but because both nations are rational actors who understand the catastrophic cost of open warfare. Instead, we are entering an era of system multi domain rivalry. First in Syria, a quiet military chess game where both sides draw hard red lines around their spheres of influence and rely on deconfliction hotlines to prevent accidental dogfights. Second, in the Mediterranean, a high stakes battle over subsea resources, maritime borders, and competing trade corridors like IMEC and the Blue Homeland. Third, in the shadows, an unrelenting intelligence war involving counter espionage, proxy patronage, and cyber warfare. For decades, the Middle East was defined by the rivalry between Riyadh and Tehran, or Tel Aviv and Tehran. But as the regional landscape reshapes itself, the rivalry between Israel and Turkey will dictate the future of the Mediterranean, the Levant, and the broader balance of power. What do you think? Is a Cold War between Israel and Turkey inevitable? Or will pragmatic trade and NATO diplomacy eventually force these two former allies back together? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this deep dive valuable, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next geopolitical breakdown. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next report. God bless, Godspeed, and have a wonderful evening. And today was July 29th, 2026, and I will catch you in the next video.